Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Reauthorization, Conejo County Commissioner and the 2023 President of the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. I'd like to thank all the media representatives that are joining us here today. We have come here today to call on the General Assembly and the Shapiro administration to address the critical need for increased county mental health funding and 911 reauthorization and state budget. Though both of these items are critical to the well-being of all Pennsylvanians, they are currently at a critical crossroads, something that should concern every single person living in this Commonwealth. No matter who you are or what part of the state you live in, I feel certain that you or someone you know has been helped by county mental health and or 911 services. I am joined here today by Dauphin County Commissioner George Hartwick, Tioga County Commissioner Mark Hamilton, as well as Andrea Kepler, who is on the front lines of county mental health and 911 services as Dauphin County's mental health administrator. It cannot be stressed enough how important these two services are and how crucial it is that the General Assembly and the administration step up to support the counties and ultimately each and every resident of Pennsylvania. I'd like to first introduce Dauphin County Commissioner George Hartwick, who also serves as chair of the CCAP Human Services Committee.
Thank you, President Abramovic. I am Croatian, so saying that for me is probably easier than most. As you might know, today is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month. And as a society, we've done a great job at creating awareness, battling the stigma of mental illness, and understanding the need for increased level of services. But we've certainly come a long way, but we must come even further. Awareness is a powerful tool. For instance, residents are aware of the need for more mental health funding, particularly after the closure of the state hospital. Funding and the administration and General Assembly are aware of the need for mental health funding. But right now, awareness is not the problem. The Commonwealth's mental health system is in crisis and crumbling. Pennsylvania residents have waited long enough while the impacts of 15 years of not keeping pace with increases have unraveled the county's mental health system. For more than a decade, counties have been struggling to maintain community-based services such as outpatient treatment for adults and children, crisis intervention, school services, support for individuals leaving our state mental hospitals, treatment, community consultation, prevention, and so much more. Governor Shapiro has been very vocal about the need for more mental health funding in the state, specifically in our schools. We absolutely agree that we need to take the steps to support mental health of our children and youth in Pennsylvania. But as counties, we are simply asking the General Assembly and the current administration to recognize the needs of our children and youth and their families, friends, and neighbors, regardless of whether they are in a school setting or outside the classroom. After all, the care a student receives during the other 16 hours of the day, during the holidays, or when they begin their summer breaks in just a few short weeks is just as vital. In order to avoid a complete collapse of the system, counties are calling for a significant investment of $150 million in the county mental health base for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. In addition to the allocation of the $100 million in federal ARPA dollars for adult mental health to begin the rebuilding process. I will say it once again, counties have not seen an increase in mental health base funds since 2008, and then took a significant cut in 2012 on top of that, all while the needs of our counties, particularly post-pandemic, have grown exponentially. The investment counties are calling for in the coming fiscal year will help to stabilize the system and stop the crumbling while we develop a long-term plan of further increases over the next 5 to 10 years for a strong system to benefit our entire Commonwealth. Pennsylvania, truthfully, we have waited long enough. Countless lives have been affected, and quite frankly, counties have done a good job of patching and band-aiding a system together to create and avoid a real tragedy. We have had impacts of a decade and a half of underfunding, and that have truly unraveled this system. Rebuilding it now will not happen overnight, but the time to act is now. I would like to now introduce our county administrator in Dauphin County, who is an individual I have a great deal of respect for and I'm excited about some of the progress we intend to make with this new funding. I'd like to introduce now our county mental health administrator, Andrea Kepler.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardwick. As administrator of all publicly funded mental health, autism, and developmental programs in Dauphin County, my office oversees all base-funded mental health services provided to Dauphin County residents. I may be responsible for Dauphin County, but I am 100% confident I speak for every one of my counterparts in every county across Pennsylvania. We are gravely concerned about all funding of our mental health services, particularly with the expectation of many people no longer qualifying for Medicaid eligibility following the expiration of a public health emergency. Our program funds services to individuals with the most serious mental health needs. As a social worker since 1976, as the former Assistant CEO of Harrisburg State Hospital, and as the former CEO of Warnersville State Hospital, many of the people I previously took care of, I am currently responsible for in base-funded mental health-funded program services here in Dauphin County. Without these necessary supports, the health of those we support will decline, more incidents will occur, and more homelessness will be seen. Base funds finance the following vital services: intake into the public mental health service delivery system, and first level or administrative case management. Administrative case management is very involved in supporting individuals who require or agree to lesser support, who are incarcerated currently, who are admitted to state hospitals, and or involved in mental health specialty court. In other words, the individuals that we are advocating for with serious mental illness in county jail, as well as those in state mental hospitals, are not fully supported in their discharge process without administrative case management services. 30% of the crisis intervention budget, which permits emergency services, it's those services that support emergency admission to inpatient psychiatric care. 30% of the budget for those services are not adequately funded without base funds. During the course of the last 3 years, we have seen a tremendous erosion of our crisis intervention services, largely because of staffing vacancies. Adult residential services. Annually, Dauphin County alone supports 200 individuals in 24/7 support and supervision in their residential settings. And then student assistant program services, commonly unknown to the general public. We have student assistant support services in every school district in the county, at all levels of public education, and that includes elementary schools with the exception of two school districts. We just recently incepted elementary level student assistant program services. They are operating on a grant. Once that grant expires, we will not have funds to continue those services. We need an expansion of base-funded services to take care of services that have been accepted over a long period of time that without additional advances in funding will no longer continue to be what they are yesterday, let alone today. None of the services I had mentioned, administrative case management, emergency services, residential services, or student assistant program services, have received COLAs in over a decade. That's the cost of living increase, folks, that every one of us appreciates when we do receive that in our income. But these people, the people that staff these programs, have received none of that and continue to operate on flat level funding that has existed over a lengthy period of time, a decade to be exact. I have served as the County Mental Health Administrator since September of 2020. Previously, I worked very closely with Dauphin County MHADP around state mental hospital closure initiatives. Since sustaining a budget reduction approximately 10 years ago, funding was never restored and no increase ever occurred. So in other words, we built all of these beautiful and promising services, and we never gave them any more funding to continue to grow and to support increasingly needy individuals, increasingly challenging individuals. The cost of living increased for the rest of us, but somehow we didn't make the connection that the cost of living also increased in operating these vital services. So when we talk about our own housing, our own utilities, our own insurance, and our own food costs increasing, well, guess what? When you run 24 times 7 days a week services, all of those costs increase as well, and we receive no funding increases to support those costs. Focusing all funding on just expanded services over the years has eroded the infrastructure of our basic system. Service providers have needed to constantly juggle staffing as interest in the jobs have dried up and providers were unable to offer more money to attract recent graduates. 24/7 jobs, which reflect crisis intervention and residential services, have continued to struggle to fill vacancies. Where we have no staffing capacity, we have no ability to serve people, including those who are on waiting lists. And our waiting lists for these services have grown. Even as recently as last week, OMSOS officials clarified they were only interested in receiving proposals for increases about providers who are at imminent risk for closure. Imminent risk. That's every one of our providers that will be there in a few months from now because we're not taking care of what they need today. What a tragedy. Dauphin County currently estimates being $2.5 million short in base mental health funds in fiscal year 23-24. That is the funds that our providers have requested to offer cost of living wages increases, to pay minimum wage to some. Some continue to pay less than what people would earn if they went to hourly jobs in the general community. Most concerning, and may be really the erosion of all of these services, is that staffing capacity translates into continued service modifications, continued reductions until services must close. So what happens if we're not soon adequately funded? Today, Dauphin County has one walk-in clinic, outside of the emergency room, that is. It has minimal capacity. An adult needing immediate access to an outpatient appointment is likely not to receive one. The wait is approximately 6 to 12 weeks. For children, it's even worse. If you're a parent, a family in crisis, your child will probably wait 2 months for an outpatient appointment. And if they need what we call partial hospitalization services, they're more likely to wait 3 months. This is hardly the way to approach crises in families and crises with adult individuals. Dauphin County has student assistance services in most public schools in our county at all levels of public education. Without increased funding, we will need to reduce those services. Today, crisis intervention is operating at 50% staffing. We have seen a 111% increase since 2012. In children between the ages of 13 and 17 reaching out to crisis intervention. For 18 to 34-year-olds, there's been a 24% increase. And for those under 13, there's been an 88% increase in outreach to crisis since 2012. Instead, we've gotten to reduce services because we don't have the staff and can't hire the staff for the jobs that we have to maintain 24/7 service. We can no longer facilitate voluntary admissions on behalf of the hospitals and the ERs. Emergency rooms at one time were fully supported by county-based funds. No more, we can't do it. We will continue to see waiting lists grow, crisis intervention will continue to shrink, and providers will continue to modify services and likely eliminate them. In my expectation over the upcoming fiscal year, our waiting list for residential services will continue to grow. If more funding does not happen soon, we will see providers drop out of the network. We will continue to see the elimination of services. So I thank you for your attention, and I'd like to turn it back over to Commissioner Abramovich. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea and Commissioner Hardwick. That was a very powerful speech. To really hammer this point home, CCAP is still very deep into the numbers. And the need we keep seeing, it's going to take an additional $1.2 billion to fully support Pennsylvanians' mental health needs. $1.2 billion. That's an incredible need for our residents, and our residents are suffering because of it. But Commissioner Hartwick said, counties also know it's going to take time to rebuild our system to its full capacity. And that's why we've created a long-term plan to do that starting right now. We're not asking for $1.2 billion, but we're asking for a $150 million investment in county mental health base and the allocation of $100 million in federal ARPA money that have been set aside for mental health. We need the administration and the legislature to join us in this effort. With that being said, in addition to mental health funding, there's another county service that's facing a great uncertainty right now. Our 911 call taking and dispatch system across the state. 24/7, 365 days a year. If you pick up the phone and dial 911, there's a person to answer that. And I say that. It's the one job in the Commonwealth that doesn't get a day off. They're there 24/7, 365 to answer the phone in every Pennsylvania resident's worst time and their time of need. Whether you're anywhere with a loved one you need to call, whether it's something serious happening with you, when you dial 911, that individual is the hero behind the desk that you don't see, but is the first response to help you in your time of need. No matter where you are in Pennsylvania, you can get that to happen. Montgomery County, a couple months ago, I spoke with the governor. It is not at the 911 center there. There was a dispatcher that came up and said how she delivered a baby from behind her desk. That's what these people do day in and day out. They save lives. They bring new life into this world. And that's why right now it's a critical need for us to fund 911 to the adequate level that it is. It's just one of the many stories we also have in every county, from Dolphin to Venango to Tioga to Allegheny to Philadelphia. These are the individuals that are there day in and day out protecting each and every one of us as first responders. So counties are very proud and honored to provide these key functions in public safety, but the cost of 911 services continue to outpace its funding, and that is provided through the 911 surcharge. Since the surcharge was last increased in 2015, the funding it generates has remained relatively flat. So counties are again picking up more and more costs for 911. And the fee, along with the overall 911 law, is set to expire and sunset in January of 2024. That's why we must see movement on the funding and reauthorization of our 911 laws in Pennsylvania. And to speak more on this, I'd like to introduce Tioga County Commissioner Mark Hamilton, who also serves as the co-chair for the CCAP Emergency Management and Veterans Affairs Committee.
Thank you, President Obama. As we all know, technology continues to evolve at a dramatic pace, and for 911 services, that's a wonderful thing. We're constantly enhancing the ways to connect citizens to our 911 dispatchers and to find their location with pinpoint accuracy. Technology also gives us more ways to connect and share valuable information about an emergency, like texting or sharing a video. However, none of this matters if funding for 911 system does not keep up with our technology. Pennsylvania counties need to be able to rely on consistent and sustainable funding if we're going to uphold our responsibility as the first line of emergency response. But we are less than a year away from the sunset of the state's 911 statute. Action must be taken now. Counties are calling for a modest increase in the 911 surcharge to $2.30, with a 15-cent increase each year until the next reauthorization in 5 years. To put that in plain terms, someone with a cell phone will only pay $57 total over the 5-year period. That's less than an extra dollar per month. I would say that's an incredible value for the peace of mind that someone will always answer your call in a time of crisis. With this proposed surcharge rate, Counties will not have to rely so heavily on county property taxes to assure their 911 systems are properly funded. But again, we must act now. A one-year delay at the current funding level would force counties to fund nearly 38% of the system with county property tax dollars. And over time, if the current surcharge remains at the same level, that number will jump to 46% in the year 2027. This would force counties to consider raising property taxes to cover the increasing county share of 911 costs, something that neither counties nor the residents want to see happen. With a new 5-year reauthorization, we also have the proper amount of time to determine if a surcharge is still the best funding method as new technologies evolve. 911 is the backbone of the emergency response. We don't really think about it unless we need it. But when we need it, we want it to be there. And we want it to work efficiently and effectively. And we want trained dispatchers on the other end who can get us the help we need as quickly as possible. Now is the time to make that investment in our 911 system. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn it back to our President, Chip Roundabout.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. So,